The next two presentations are about Slave Lake. You are doing it separately. Okay. There's going to be a mixture. Kevin Parkinson is Wildlife Operations Officer, and Stu Walkinshaw is the Provincial Fire Smart Coordinator, Slave Lake. Loops. He's worked in Alberta at the Rapid Attack Crews for 3 years, and then worked as sector boss in Rocky Mountain House. So he's been posted in Calgary, high level, Rocky Mountain House, Slave Lake, and he's a certified ignition specialist, and so he's fought fires in BC, Ontario, Alberta, Quebec, the Yukon, Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. Stu is from Canmore. He runs a company called Montaigne Fire Management, and he's been working in the forest industry since 1978 for both private and public sector, and is specialized in wildlife urban interface, and has been in fire operations since 1993. So he is currently working as the project manager for the
thanks for letting me come here. I've been kind of asked to give a presentation on exactly what happened last May, and Steve's going to talk about the recovery and what's going on since the event occurred. So I'm pretty sure everyone heard about the Slave Lake fires last year. I don't have a lot to speak. I'm not really keen on speaking. I've got lots of pretty pictures, so I figured that'll keep you more amused than listening to me babble. So I'll start off with some humor. So, as everyone knew, May was pretty dry for us. This is pretty much how we felt the Saturday, May 14th, and Sunday, the 15th. This is kind of how we felt Monday morning when trying to figure out what exactly just happened. Like I said, you got to add some humor to it. So. For people that aren't familiar, Slave Lake is not new to fires. As you can see over the years, numerous presentation is I broke it down between the two major fires that came into Slave Lake area. Fire 56 was the one that hit the South Shore, the communities of Widewater, Wagner. And then I'll talk about 65, the one that reached Slave Lake itself. So on the 14th, our air attack officer actually doing a startup flight with his bird dog discovered the fire at 1:30 in the afternoon. It was assessed at 0.2 of a hectare and a cut block and a slash. At that time, numerous fires were going on in the province, down in Rocky and other areas. Tankers weren't immediately available. Crews were dispatched, heavy equipment was dispatched. Around 4:30, it was approximately 30 hectares, and about 6 o'clock, it was 300 hectares. Structured protection was started on the south side of Highway 2, so there was numerous little kind of separate community villages that the fire department has. This is a picture I took as I was coming from a separate fire about an hour and a half north of Slave Lake, and these are pictures as I was flying in. So about 4:20 I took this picture. As you see, it's not too bad. It's still in the cut block. It's in the grass. It's in the slash. It hadn't reached the timber at this point in time. As you can tell by the picture, the winds were already started pretty good this day. Winds are about 40, gusting 60. We had crews on this. There was bombers working it. There was bucket machines working it, and heavy equipment was being rolled into the site as well. And as you see, about 7:45, it really started to pick up. Winds were still about 60, gusting to 80 at this time. But due to the fact that the other fire started just outside of Slave Lake, all resources were pulled to that one as it was a higher priority. And this is about 5 hours. About 9 o'clock it was assessed at 1,100 hectares. At 10 after 12 there was a massive large spot fire well ahead of this, the main fire itself. We had some fire behavior specialists come in and run some numbers for us, calculated when are we going to hit that, that trigger point where we're going to evacuate South Shore. At 2 o'clock we made the call to evacuate the South Shore. We're actually only 15 minutes off from what the fire behavior specialist predicted, so it was pretty good. About 20 after 3, it was estimated about 15,000 hectares in size. At 4:30, we had multiple spot fires well out ahead of the front of the fire. And about 20 after 8, the fire breached the highway and got into the communities of Canyon, Wagner, and there. In total, within the MD itself, 56 structures were lost and another 56 were damaged. The total size of this fire at the end of the day was 16,856.5 hectares. This is some pictures from the 50. So as you see at 9 o'clock in the morning, this fire was still really active. I've got some weather slides later on, but I think we dropped down to 23% RH overnight between the 14th and the 15th, and we never got any good recovery at all. This is about 1:15 looking from the warehouse at Slave Lake Fire Center, and as you can see it was well on its way. This is about 20 to 2, and you can see it's spotting prolifically in front of itself, and the winds just never stopped for it. This is about 5 after 4. So on this time on Sunday, the winds actually increased to about 80 kilometers sustained and gusted up to 114 kilometers an hour. And at this time, the wind shifted from the southeast, pretty much almost coming to an east wind. And this is pictures we took on the 17th. Just to show you how picky it was. It didn't take everything out, it just seeped out. And some more pictures, and that's where it crossed Highway 2. So Fire 65 was the fire that breached Slave Lake. Just some timelines here. About 10 to 6 this fire started. It was assessed at 5 hectares 5 minutes after being detected. We had multiple air tankers. There was every single bomber group from the province. We had at least 4 bomber groups from BC over supporting as well too. Heavy equipment dispatched. There was fire crews. The local municipal fire department were there. The crews in the fire department and the heavy equipment worked through the night, and we actually saved about 10 structures that night just by working through the night. On the first night, we lost 10 structures. Immediate evacuation of Poplar Estates. In conjunction between myself and my IC on the ground, we agreed to evacuate Old Smith Highway and the Sawridge truck stop. At the time, winds were southeast, and it looked like it was going to push past town at that time. About 11:30 at night, we built a dozer guard along Highway 88 just to enhance the width of the highway. So if the fire did come that way, we would have some more holding ground to work on. At the end of the night, they estimated about 200 hectares in size, but it wasn't accurate at all, just we couldn't see from smoke conditions. So this was the fire 5 minutes after being detected by the bird dog plane in our lookout tower. So as you can see, it was already up and running right after it started. This is about 5 to 8. So this is the community of Poplar Estates. These are pictures when I finally got over top of the fire. I was stacked about 6,500 feet because I had so many bombers below me. So this is about the closest I got to the ground that night. This was a picture I took when coming from another fire. So on the left-hand side of the screen is Fire 65, and the right-hand side of the screen is Fire 56. And as I say, on the Saturday night, with the way the current winds were, it looked like it was going to push past town. And about 7:45, and then about 8:15. And like I say, as you can see, the winds never really were in our favor at all during this whole entire event. So some quick timelines on the 15th. Some stuff I wasn't allowed to discuss because it's still under investigation. But about 5:15, the fire breached Highway 88, and it was fast. It took about 20 minutes to run 2.5 kilometers. So it wasn't a lot of warning notice for a lot of people. Once the fire breached the highway, we had our fire crews, the fire departments, Fish and Wildlife, the RCMP, any resource we could, start evacuating town. The safest spot we had at that time was the Walmart Canadian Tire parking lot. About 10 to 10, the Highway 2 was finally open to the east for evacuation of town. And it was mandatory evacuation. I believe it was just about 9,000 residents were evacuated. Final size of this fire was 4,700 hectares. In total, we had 374 structures lost and another 52 that were damaged. Now, these numbers aren't completely accurate because somebody might have lost a back deck or a shed. They aren't reflected in these numbers. So Sunday morning, some pictures we took. This is looking to the southeast, kind of towards Mitzi Lake, going towards Edmonton. This is looking back towards Slave Lake. So Sunday morning, it was looking relatively quiet. We had a lot of fire department staff working there, and the heavy equipment was going pretty crazy all night. About 8 o'clock, things were still looking relatively good compared to the other fire that we were looking at as well too. So this is 9 o'clock. As you can see, the fire, just kind of right in the middle of the screen, was fire 65. So it was pretty small in comparison to fire 56 that was already still up and running at 9 o'clock in the morning. This is about 10 to 12. So as you see, we still had crews, we still had helicopters working, we still had heavy equipment working. Things were looking relatively good at this time, even though with the winds and the conditions we had. 10 after 12, fire is still relatively pretty quiet. About 1 o'clock, the smoke column on the right-hand side of the screen started to get up and take off. It was in a mixture of swampland spruce, but it was heading, it wasn't going to come into the town of Slave Lake. We were trying to deal with that, and as you can see, multiple retardant lines along Highway 2 trying to action that as well too. It was about 20 after 2, and as you can see the difference, fire 56 was up and rolling at this time, and 65 we were still somewhat had a handle on it. About 2:30, things were still looking relatively good until the wind shifted. Put things in perspective, this was our duty room. So Saturday morning when I walked in at 10 o'clock, I had 90 hectares on the board. That was from a fire a week old. As you see the boards there, there's actually another board behind this one that is full as well too. Those are all fires that we were dealing with within those 2-day time frames. So it was a pretty hectic couple days, I'll tell you that. So when the winds finally switched on us and the fire picked up, this is actually the road that leads into Popular Estates and the Information Center right outside of Slave Lake. This one I think is really good because this is when the winds shifted and increased. So at the time, this is about 10 to 4. And if you look at the smoke column now, not a lot of energy being built in this column yet. This is the column 3 minutes later. So as you see, it didn't take long for that fire to really pick up and roll. About 2 minutes after 4, this is really when the winds did their switch on us and increased to the 114 gusts. This was basically this fire split on us, and one head came into town, one head came around town, and it basically blocked town off. Plus fire 56 had blocked evacuation to the west as well too. So about 4:45 was when the first structures were on fire, but they weren't directly right against Highway 88. These are more towards the center of town. This picture I kind of put in there because as you can see the roadways, well, this house is already burning down. The roadways are packed with people trying to get out. During this whole event, we never had one fatality, never had one major car accident, any major injuries. There was a couple fences on somebody's properties that were lost from people that didn't want to stay on the roads, but overall it was pretty good. So about 10 to 5, this is when things really started to pick up. Now at this time we had bombers working, and these guys had pushed their limits and they were flying in conditions they probably shouldn't have, but they kept going until we finally shut them down. I put this one in because it's basically organized chaos. This is what every single street in Slave Lake looked like. But it was pretty amazing because people would come to a four-way stop and they'd actually stop and let someone else go by. If somebody was walking with a suitcase, they'd stop and pick up that person. It wasn't like a complete chaos event. It was actually really good. So on the bottom of the screen, you can see 3 big tanker trucks. That's actually the fuel for our bomber base. So it took a little bit for those guys to get to us, just due to the amount of traffic that was on the roads. Once again, the traffic on the roads. Walmart parking lot was filling up pretty fast, so I dispatched the CAT group to kind of that field there. It was all solid grass, about 1.5 feet high. Dispatched a CAT group of 6 cats to go and clear it off, just so we can start parking vehicles there and wouldn't have somebody drop a cigarette or an exhaust start moving fire on us. It's about 10 to 7, and this is the smoke column directly over the airport, the bomber base, and the operations were shut down at this time for all aircraft. It just wasn't safe for our responders anymore. And about 5 to 7. So now to put things in perspective, this fire kept running until about 2:30 in the morning on, well, basically Monday morning. So it was a pretty long night for a lot of our staff. A lot of our staff are on the volunteer fire department as well too. So kind of playing dual roles. The fire had crossed Highway 88 and basically got into the southeast portion. This was the portion of town that was affected the worst. And as you see, the forest fire on the right-hand side of the screen is pretty much out. And now all we're dealing with is house-to-house structure fires. And it kind of puts it in perspective. The really wispy white smoke there was actually the forest fire, and the black column is town. Show you some of the winds we were dealing with. This is actually a hangar that was blown down from the wind. That plane is actually staked down with 2 pretty large concrete blocks, and it actually moved the blocks. We had some of our 212s being pushed about 40 feet down the tarmac just from the winds itself, and they were tied down. The fire chief, Jamie Coots, we have a really good working relationship. We send a lot of heavy equipment to him to help him within the town limits as well. He had done some research on the Kelowna fire and ended up using the same tactic they did and deployed heavy equipment, and this was the only way we stopped the fire from continuing to go through town. So unfortunately we had to walk down about a block's worth of houses to save the rest of town, but it was effective at that time. This is the town hall, the library, and the government office downtown. We ended up taking a hoe and walking it through one of the main corridors to stop it from spreading throughout the rest of the mall. And we were successful on that one. And this is basically where they made the last Alamo. This is dead center of town. Heavy equipment was coming in. As soon as the house was catching on fire, they'd go in with the hoe, they'd knock it down, the cat would walk it down, and they'd try to spray it to hold it. Put things in perspective at this time, we lost power completely in town from all 3 routes that power comes into town. We had no phone, we had no radio, we had no communication lines. There was no backup power at the pumping stations, so the hydrants actually went dry about 7:30 at night. So we had no water in town. They set up about a 3-mile direct line from the lake to try to hold it here, and it was successful. This is about when the highways were first trying to start to open them up, and as you see, the main forest fires pretty much died out. It's running in the grass and stuff like that. But now the big issue is town itself. And in the background is Fire 56. It's already reached the highways down at the lake, And once these runs were over, they were pretty much done. And then, of course, we were left dealing with the town and trying to figure out what was going on. And these are pictures our bird dog took as they were leaving to go back to their respective bases. So that's pretty much center of town. It's tough to see, but there was actually a train stuck in the middle of town too. It couldn't go east, it couldn't go west. So it was Murphy's Law. If you can't have one thing go wrong, you might as well make everything go wrong. And this was the next morning, kind of the aftermath. So as you see, it took out one very large portion of the southeast. That was the main concentration of the houses lost. It continued through the creek system, got in through downtown. The kind of building right in the center of the screen on the right-hand side is the downtown office. Across the highway, or the street and the railway tracks, got into a couple other places. And it's tough to see. Right about here, this is where they made it last scan. Put a cat guard around that school, backed in all the fire trucks off the main line, and that's where we tried to hold it while we could. The fire department had to make some pretty tough calls. Do we save the town office or do we try to save the hospital? Hospital was a brick building with a metal roof, so they focused on that one. It was savable, but it had a huge oxygen tank out the back, so they were concerned about that one as well too. As you can see, looking kind of south on Highway 88, you can see where we widen up the cat guard to try to help out in case this fire did come at town. With the winds we had, this wasn't effective. Had it not been 100 km/h winds, this probably would have worked. But as you see on the right-hand side of the highway, the big timber there never even burnt. Yet everything right behind it burnt to the ground. So it was hit and miss. Some of the embers we had coming in town were about 2 feet in size. It wasn't the standard pine cone ember, it was construction material, it was shingles, it was chunks of plywood. And perspective going this way. I put this one in here because we do a lot of hazard reduction burning with the fire department within the town limits of Slave Lake. We had actually burnt along the highway and within town about 3 weeks prior. So anywhere where you see there's really, really bright green grass, we actually burnt that about 3 weeks prior. That was actually a key thing for helping save a lot of Slave Lake because it didn't have those wicks to go in. The Ford dealership got in the drag grass behind the Ford dealership, got in underneath the trailers. That's how the Ford dealership got lost. This one here, this is the main railway that runs through the center of town. We burn it out every spring. As you see, it was an effective fire break that actually helped us out quite a lot. So I put that in there as a bonus of doing the fire smarting and the hazard reduction burn. This is the other head that came out just to the north of Slave Lake, came out at the Devonshire Beach. This is the old Smith Highway. So we had multiple residents out there, but they're more spread out. It wasn't quite as compacted as town was. And that's just an aerial perspective where this head had split off from the other one. Our tanker base is there. So it came pretty close to getting into the industrial portion of town as well too. There's a lot of propane, there's a lot of dangerous goods over on that side of town. And it came pretty close to coming into the northeast as well too. And this is where it crossed Highway 88 and ran into the beach there. This one's kind of interesting. I got this from our weather guys. This is actually NASA photography, and it's pictures taken every 15 minutes, and they put it into kind of a loop video clip. But it shows you, we had a big fire to the north of us, Fire 57, that started about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. That one was up and running. But as you see, when the winds really hit, you just see everything blow out. That's how fast it occurred. So now to put things really into perspective, I put this slide in here. The little green dots, or sorry, we'll go with the red ones. The red ones were fires that started on the 14th of May that we were dealing with. So in total we had 52 starts over a 2-day period. We actually caught 26 of them, which was pretty miraculous. But as you see, there was multiple fires in multiple communities and threatening multiple communities at the exact same time. So we had the community of Chow Peerless on the 14th. We had Wabasca where we had some evacuations on the 14th. We had Gift Lake, we had Whitefish, we had Fost, we also had East Prairie. There was multiple communities, and it was tough to deal with because we were trying to set priorities and trying to get resources. And the whole province at this time was having multiple fires at the same time. So some of the weather we had, I put in our tower weather because it gives us better the winds than what the town forecast does. So flat top weather on the 14th at noon, the winds were southeast 47, gusting 80, and that was at noon. And it didn't get any better for us. I put this one in there. This is the weather station directly in town, and I put this one in there for the RH. So as you notice, about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, the RH really stops the drop. We go from 18% to 8 o'clock at night, the RH is 14. At 11 o'clock or 10 o'clock at night, the RH was 18%. So as you see, we didn't get any recovery overnight. Thank goodness the winds did die down a bit overnight and kind of got a little bit of foothold on it, but next day things changed. So the tower weather for the 15th, Deer Mountain was showing steady winds of 68, gusting 104. Flat Top Tower, which is just right outside of town, at noon was showing winds of 54, gusting 84. So as you see, it just wasn't in our favor that weekend. And then the RHs for the 15th, when the fire finally, the winds turned on us and the fire came to town, the RHs were 20% at that time with the temperature 20%. And like I say, winds sustained at 89, gusting 114. I put some fire behavior in there. We don't really have the accurate numbers of what the spread weights were on the 15th. We're still trying to work on that. But on the 14th, just put things in perspective. In the mixedwood, spread weights were 39 meters a minute. In leafless aspen, it was 14 meters a minute. In the cured grass, it was 126 to 133 meters a minute. And in black spruce, it was 43 meters a minute. So some of the issues we faced throughout this 2-day event, we grounded our aircraft due to smoke and due to unsafe conditions. The tanker base is closed. Once we closed the tanker base down, we actually opened it up for the public as another evacuation spot. And I believe we had about 1,500 to 2,000 people parked within our tanker base and on the tarmac because it was a defendable spot. Extreme spread rates. They've actually done some calculations and estimated about 900,000 embers per hectare were landing within town at this time. And extreme fire behavior. Like I say, the power to the town was completely shut down. We had no backup power at the pumping station, which meant we had no water coming out of the hydrant. Phone lines went down, the radio station went down, communication systems went down completely. Fire blocked all routes of leaving town. So we had the 2 fires that hit the town of Slave Lake. We had another fire that was just to the north of Slave Lake, Fire 82, that was threatening the highways there as well too. We had a fire out in Wabasca that had closed down Highway 752 to Wabasca at that time, so there was no place to send anyone. We were basically stuck within town limits. 52 starts in a 2-day period. Communities of Canyon Creek and Widewater, town of Slave Lake and Poplar Estate, community of Fost, East Prairie and Anilda, community of Gift Lake and Whitefish, community of Wabasca, and the town of Red Earth, where we actually lost another 5 structures there as well too at the time this breached Slave Lake. We also evacuated 9 lookout towers on the 15th, so it was pretty busy. So during this time, we had a lot of interaction with the fire department, and we have a really good working relationship in Slave Lake. So we do lots of cross training. We do lots of hazard reduction burning in the spring and in the fall. Probably about 40 hectares within the town limits itself. We have multiple staff that are volunteers on the fire department as well too. Really good open communication lines with the fire department and ourselves. Jamie Coots, the fire chief, can walk into our office and doesn't have to stop in the front desk or anything. There's an open door policy to the warehouse, and this was really key on this. As I was ordering more sprinkler kits, the fire department just basically rolled up with a flat deck. They took it off the flat deck from Edmonton, put it on the fire department's flat deck, and they just went away. So it worked really good, and we assist each other wherever needed. So This is the first time in my forestry career I've ever had 300 guys listening to a safety briefing, and I could actually hear a pin drop and everyone was paying attention to me. We had to do briefings for the multiple fire departments that came up to assist Slave Lake Fire Department. None of them had really experienced wildland fire before. They'd see a big smoke column coming up, complete panic and chaos, and they were trying to pull themselves out and evacuate. So we ended up having to do daily briefings with these guys just so they understood exactly what was going on, what the fire behavior was, and what the risk to them was as well too. Some of the assistance at this time we provided to the town, the EOC, the fire department, the GIS and the mapping products, logistical support, the weather data and the fire behavior, heavy equipment and operators, equipment from the warehouse, so we had sprinklers, pumps, foam, radios, and numerous other items. At the time, the town wasn't prepared for this, and this is kind of what we do, so we had a lot of contractors in place that were available to assist. Like I say, just giving the briefing to the guys. I tried to get a picture of all the fire trucks that were in town. It was really impressive, but they're all out, and this is about the most I can get in one single shot. So some learning opportunities that we achieved out of this. One big thing was to ensure we had a local staff member attached to an incident command team when they came from like the fire department and other agencies within town. Give the daily briefing to the structure fire guys as to what the fire did that day, what we're expecting the next day, the weather and the fire behavior. Continued representation and communication with the EOC. A coordinated implementation with the RCMP in regards to roadblocks. That was some of our biggest headaches on the first couple of days was the RCMP had their job to do, and it was stop people from coming in. We were trying to get contractors and heavy equipment, and we couldn't get them through. At some points, we had equipment waiting 2 hours to get through a roadblock. So we've worked on that since then, and more coordinated mock disasters with the local emergency responders and officials. And the unfortunate part is we actually had a mock exercise the week after this fire started, set up, planned, in place, and it's going to be a fire within the creek system within the town of Slave Lake. But the event kind of beat us to it. So we went from fires to floods, as everyone heard, and the summer just never ended for us. So, if you have any questions for me before I turn you over to Stu on the what's going on the recovery and the fire smart side of things?
What's the chance of it happening again?
I mean, there's a lot of communities out there that have the same conditions as Slave Lake. It's got the fuel right up to the community itself. With these weather conditions, yeah, it's likely it will happen again sometime in the future.
To the same degree?
It's hard to say. I mean, Kelowna happened. You've had Barrier, you've had the McClure fires. This isn't new to forestry, so yeah, it's hard to say on what scale it would happen. Like I say, I mean, we had a fire that breached Red Earth, and we lost 6 structures there as well too. So.
Hi, thanks for your presentation. My question is around the fire weather indices. I know the wind came up. Could you give me a sense of what kind of fire danger hazard rating you had without the wind going into these days?
Without the wind, believe it or not, one of the fires that we had started kind of down in the Deer Mountain complex. On the Thursday the 12th, we actually had 12 centimeters of snow on that fire. On the 14th, that fire got up and took a 6,000 hectare run on us. It was just a really fast spring. The drought codes and the BUIs were actually relatively low. It was the FFMCs and the ISIs that really affected us. ISIs were over 90, and FFMCs were about 96 on the day this occurred.
So, a follow-up question. The question is, when you're telling the communities what the fire danger rating is there something we should be looking at differently than we're doing today or last year, I guess? You know, did the community know we were in a high fire hazard or something like that? And Can you comment on that?
Yep. So at the time, we had an information officer that was sending daily updates throughout the week of May 11th to the 15th. So she was sending daily updates to all of the stakeholders, the key stakeholders, the town, everything like that. We had an industry liaison person on that was talking to all the industry, like oil and gas, the power line companies, everything like that. We actually suspended all burning permits that week prior to the fire occurring. Any permits that were active, we actually went out and told the guys they have to go and put them out. Just we knew what the conditions were and what we were going to be facing. We weren't expecting the winds to this degree, and neither was the weather section at the time. So it's tough. We had a lot of communications in place. There was radio station ads, there was ads in the newspaper. Like I say, there was daily updates going out. The Facebook page was updated daily. On the 14th, when the fires first started, there was updates going out about every half an hour to 45 minutes to all the stakeholders and agencies within town. So. Can't comment. Sorry, it's under investigation this time.
I understand there was a third-party review of the SRD response. Has that been completed, or will it be made public? Or?
So that's the flat top review. It's a third-party review that was SRD has done just basically on how we respond to this incident as a district and as a provincial level. It hasn't been released yet, but yes, once it's released, it'll be open to public to have access to.
Did you get to meet Will and Kate?
No, I was away getting married actually. I'll turn you guys over to Sue now.
There should be lots of time if you've got more questions for Kevin. I won't take the full time. So now what I'm here to speak about is where we're going from here on the Slave Lake Fire Smart Recovery Project. And I wanted to give you a little bit of an update as to what's been done so far and where we're going to move to over the next 1, 2, and 3 year period to eventually bring Slave Lake and the region into what's referred to as a model fire smart community. I think it'd be good to start. First of all, I see on the agenda I've been promoted to the Provincial Fire Smart Coordinator. I appreciate that, but I'm actually not the Provincial Fire Smart Coordinator. Just a slimy consultant that's working as the as what's called the Fire Smart Program Manager for the project that's going on up at Slave Lake. The first slide is it's a slide of kind of the hierarchy as to what's going on in Slave Lake right now. At the top, and it's kind of acronym hell up there, but at the top of the food chain is something called Tri-Council. Tri-Council is all of the elected officials from the Sawridge First Nation, the town of Slave Lake, and the MD of Lesser Slave River number 124. They've been put together into something called Tri-Council, and it is their role to deal with the recovery efforts, not just from a fire smart perspective, but from social, infrastructure, environmental, all of the different issues that need to be recovered from this wildfire. As a result of this Tri-Council, they put together a request for $20 million in fire smart funding, which was approved by the provincial government. So from there then, there's the next level called the CAO Secretariat, the Chief Administrative Officer Secretariat. The 3 administrators for the municipalities and the First Nation, and they are the ones that are the keepers of the funds and move the next group, the Fire Smart Regional Action Team, forward. So we go through that secretariat. The FRAT team, as it's referred to, is made up of representatives from Sawridge First Nation, Town of Slave Lake, MD 124, the Lesser Slave Regional Fire Service, Chief Jamie Coots, and SRD representatives. And they are the ones that pick the tactics. or the strategies that are going to be achieved in the next 3-year period with the 20 million bucks. From there, I'm the project manager, so it's my role to make the rubber hit the road. I take direction from that FRAT team, and I move the projects forth as the team would like to see occur. And that's kind of the hierarchy of what's going on out there. There's the FRAT team, the hard-working group. I think in terms of interagency cooperation, one of the 7 disciplines of wildland-urban interface, this truly is a model of great cooperation among all of the agencies that are involved in this incident. The vision of that group: develop a fire-smart model community. That's the key point. At the end of the day, when this money gets spent, the goal is to have a model community that other communities can take a look at and say, yeah, we should try and do some of these items. And I think something else that we should bring up is the region. So the big purple line there is the region that this money has been applied to. So it includes all of the MD of Lesser Slave River and all of the communities within it. The South Shore communities, the communities to the east, Smith, Chisholm, down to the south and the east. It also includes Town of Slave Lake and the Sawridge First Nation. So they are all partners in this funding. So where are we going? We started out with a planning process. So Bill Baraska was brought on to build on the left-hand side the wildfire mitigation strategy. That's the preventative plan that is there to direct us into the next 3 years, and it's based on the 7. It's got a hazard and risk assessment to it. It sets priorities on communities, and it then deals with veg management, legislation, development, interagency cooperation, cross-training, emergency planning, all 7 disciplines of the wildland-urban interface with recommendations to be implemented. So that's the preventative plan. On the other side of the screen, you see the wildfire preparedness guides, the operational plans, or the pre-plans as they're referred to by structural fire departments. When the smoke's coming into town, where are the water sources? Where are the houses with wood shake roofs? Where are the evacuation routes? And what have we got for resources and containment lines to protect the particular value at risk? So the 19 communities within the region have all been pre-planned now, and there's a good solid document that can be pulled out really quickly and activated when and if necessary for another interface fire. So now we go into some of those 7 disciplines and some of the things that have been happening in the last 6 months. Veg management is always the one that everybody thinks of first in terms of fire smart actions on a community. It's maybe not the most important, but it is obviously the most visible. There have been approximately 3,000 hectares of land identified in the mitigation strategy for fuels management. And that includes all kinds of different prescriptions: thinning and pruning, dead and down cleanup, fire salvage, hazard reduction burning. So there's quite a mix of different prescriptions. This winter, there was about 450 hectares. This winter, spring I should say, 450 hectares completed. Some demonstration areas in the creek that Kevin was speaking about that carried fire through town and around the MD office and the information center. Something that people can look at and say, oh, this is what we should do around our places now. So that was where we got started. And then Kevin and his folks and the Lesser Slave Regional Fire Services have done a big chunk of hazard reduction burning, both within town and out in the MD lands as well. Sawridge First Nation has also done some significant fuels management on their lands. So we've moved forth and got about 450 hectares done over the last few months. The next thing that is kind of an innovative technique, funding has been provided to the Lesser Slave Regional Fire Service to hire a Fire Smart crew. It's a 4-person Fire Smart crew and all of the equipment to do fuels reduction work. They have chippers, mulchers, bobcats, trailers, all kinds of different tools out there. A big tractor with a mower to both implement and maintain fuels into perpetuity now. So that's, I think, a real innovative concept that Chief Jamie Coots came up with and has got up and going. Interface equipment. There was a shortage of water tenders up there, and from a municipal fire services perspective, as a result, some of the funding has been used to purchase 3 new water tenders or water trucks and 4 sprinkler trailers. They're on scene now, and they've been deployed out to the various stakeholders and fire halls across the region, and they're ready to go. Public engagement, I think, is a huge challenge up there. Getting people engaged in fire smarting their own properties. There have been 2 people, Leah Lovequist from SRD, the information officer, and Andrea McDonald from the Regional Recovery Team, Municipal Affairs, have been focused for the last 6 months on fire smart education and engagement, and have got all sorts of different tools in their chest that they've been using, including fire smart landscaping guidelines for all the new homeowners that are going to be landscaping their properties this coming spring. They've had community meetings. They've gone out and dealt with individual homeowners. So lots of different items going on there from an engagement perspective. The next one is kind of interesting. A quote from Chief Jamie Coots: "We're surrounded by water, but we can't get to any of it." And it's a really, really good point. There's a lot of water in Slade Lake, but you can't back a truck up and get a load from very many places. So some of the funding, and it's moving forth now, has been put into identifying locations for water for new water sources, and then installing dry hydrants and/or drafting source improvement pickup points, so that there are strategic locations throughout the region where trucks can pick up a load of water and do structure protection much more efficiently in the future. So that's ongoing right now as well. One thing I just forgot to talk about in public engagement, Fire Smart hazard assessments. The Regional Fire Service and their Fire Smart crew have been trained in doing Fire Smart hazard assessments. There's big signs up all over town right now that say free Fire Smart home assessments. Please call. It's 849-4110, the fire hall. They're taking a list and they're sending that crew out, and they're dealing with homeowners individually to say, you should do this, you should do that, you should change this, we can do that. So there's a lot of that public education going on right now as well. Emergency preparedness review was also identified. The municipal emergency plan, as it's referred to as, it's the emergency management plan for municipalities, is being reviewed and updated right now. It's being turned into the incident command system model rather than the old emergency site management model that most municipalities run. And so they're moving into the 21st century with the new planning process so that they can link up with their SRD partners and talk the same language. And the emergency preparedness review is a contracted review that's going to take a look at several different things, but some of them are refinement of the early warning system. There's all kinds of discussions about auto call-out systems, different ways to notify the people that there is an emergency in the area. And it's going to incorporate comments and reviews through interviews with all of the people as to what happened during the 2011 fire. So that should help to direct where the emergency preparedness is going to go in the future. Cross-training's been identified: structural, wildland, and interface, and is ongoing and has been ongoing for the last 3 or 4 months now. So all of the SRD, Regional Fire Service, RCMP are again going to be trained up to certain standards, including incident command system, fire ops in the wildland urban interface, and NFPA 1001 and 1021 firefighter and fire officer series, which municipal firefighters get for their certification levels. So that is a part of the funding as well. And then just a few other proposed initiatives that are going on that haven't taken place yet, but will move forth in the next few months. Development legislation has been proposed to all of the municipalities. They now need to go ahead and revise their municipal development plans, land use bylaws, engineering design standards, etc. And that is going to happen quite soon. Critical infrastructure backup power. You heard Kevin talking about no backup power at the water pump station at the end of the lake. They lost the hydrant system, no water supply. There have been generator systems designed and will get installed in the next few months to back up all critical infrastructure within the town and the MD. So I think that's a really important piece as well that will occur quite soon. The public engagement commitment is going to have to continue, and it's only going to get ramped up from here. The Fire Smart Education Center has been discussed. It has not been finalized yet, but there's talk about perhaps making a Fire Smart model building and using it as a Fire Smart Education Center in the town of Slave Lake or area. A live fire training facility for the regional fire services is funded, and the last thing is the emergency warning system for emergencies in the future and ways to contact the public and let them know what's going on out there. So several different things on the books, I think, is the key point. In summary, really, I think that this process is a great example of fantastic partnerships among all of the different players and the residents and the public of the region. More to come. I think we're new into it. I think you'll see this move forth over the next year in a very strong way. Thank you.
Stu, obviously, the locals there are very motivated to create that structure. How do you see that translating to other municipalities who might want to adopt? And is there a need for something to happen at the provincial level to make that cross-departmental cooperation happen?
If I understood you correctly, you're asking is the motivation in other communities as a result of Slave Lake?
No, I wondered is the province looking at some way of making what happened to Slave Lake in terms of the changes you're proposing there, make that possible to happen in other municipalities that want to adopt that?
Yeah, I don't know. There will be a complete documentation of everything that goes on in the quest towards this model Fire Smart community. The funding obviously is a huge driver on this program. Whether that funding is available in that format in the future, yeah. If I were the provincial Fire Smart coordinator, I might be able to answer that question for you.
Yeah, I guess I got homes house up in McMurray there, right on the bush line. Now with Fire Smart, if they were to come and recommend some retrofit for my property, it costs a lot of money. Is government planning on some sort of tax credits, much like home energy efficiencies in terms of reimbursement? Other than the threat of wildfire burning it down, what's the incentive for public to meet those Fire Smart requirements? To me, and I'm speaking as a private guy, no different than you, the incentive is having your house there at the end of the day, and that's the only incentive. There are no insurance savings. There are no tax incentives at this point in time.
Thank you very much, Stu. As pros, we've all been, or a lot of us have been involved historically with fire, we are right now. And I think that to go on this gentleman's question a little bit further, can you take the message, both you gentlemen, take the message to Urban Municipalities Association and AMD&C and make that presentation there? I think there's a lot of communities in our province here that truly, you know, Slave Lake was big in the news and then it's not in the news and people forget very quickly. But I think this message has to be carried ahead to, not to the professionals, we all understand, I believe, or trying to, but get the politicians in line here.
That's a good point. Yep. Anybody else? So the question was, is there any work with contractors producing protective exterior building materials? There's no work going on with this group that I'm talking about, but there's all kinds of things going on. Number one, the building code has now put in the requirement for non-combustible sheathing materials underneath vinyl siding if you have zero lot clearances. You're seeing lots of that going on within the town of Slave Lake in the new homes that are being built. You also see a fair bit of hardy plank, the composite, fiber composite material going on as siding on people's homes now in the new homes in Slave Lake. So I think a lot of people have found that, yeah, it's time to go to a more non-combustible exterior material. But this group, no, is not working with those groups at all. Okay, thanks very much.
I just wanted to remind you, if you have questions from people, we do have the microphone that's wandering around. It's hard for people to hear the back of the room to hear the questions. And sometimes in different parts of the room it's hard, so it'd be better to have the microphone if possible. You can see Pat will be wandering around with it, so just go up to him and ask for the microphone, please. So this afternoon we're going to start with Mike and Tori Head. They're with ViewWorks. We have the demonstration over there that you can see. So I'd like to introduce you to them. I don't have a bio from them at all, so I'm sorry. So I can't embarrass them, sorry. So just down, sure I'll find it. That's
All right, I'd like to thank everybody for letting us have this opportunity to come to the show and present to you what we've been doing for the last couple of years. Thanks for the good lunch from the hotel as well. I know everybody gets pretty sleepy after lunch. I work with SRD John Bradley in our office. About this time, the office door closes and I get no emails for about half an hour. So everybody just bear with us and stay awake. Also, Kevin had a good point. Pictures tell a good story and easier to talk in front of everybody. So we use videos instead. It really help.
We are not presenters either, so yeah. So anyways, our ViewWorks, part of this whole program is mostly sharing the vision, and we do a lot of work with Partners in Resource for Excellence out of the Grand Prairie area, and it's all about collaboration and communication, and that's the whole theme behind our footage is share, get it all out there, and let everybody see the same picture, which we input our data from everybody, which helps a successful job or project at the end. So that's kind of the history behind our here. So what we use is a 360 view camera, like Google Earth has used. We use it on a vehicle for doing road inspections,
You can basically go out with a map, click anywhere on the map, say in Google Earth for an oil field type thing. We also use it for a helicopter, for flying pipelines, right-of-ways, facilities, that type thing. Inspections, scouting. We have a boat there that we have the camera system on. That boat is an innovative kind of a boat. It's got wheels that retract when it's in the water. And we have a ground LiDAR unit there that we'll be mounting on this unit as well there for lakes and shores and coastal stuff. Here's a couple more units that we use, and that low ground pressure unit will be getting our LiDAR unit on it also. And here's one of the helicopters. We're going to be running a couple helicopters this year, and we have the mount on the side, and when we go up, our camera goes down, and we 360 everything, and we use a 360-degree camera and a high-quality still camera and shoot both at the same time. So we pretty much bring back every inch of projects that we go and look at. Here's a little clip of every shot is GPS that we shoot. We can shoot 16 frames per second up or down to a half a frame per second, and that's times 6. So this was a job I did just south of Grand Prairie for the county. It was a pine beetle inspection, and just going out collecting the data where all the pine beetle trees were at. And basically this is kind of just a little teaser of it, how it kind of works with a map, and you get your whole 360-degree imagery with it. So here is a map set for a client that we put together. As you can see, there's waypoints on there, and each waypoint is something else, whether it be the green triangles would be risers, red triangles are hazards, whether it be erosion, sign down. This was a pipeline inspection we did. Anything they would have got written up for the green circles are lease sites themselves, that they all their assets. The orange circles are third-party tie-ins, and basically everything's labeled and linked on the map. So I'll just play this one. So as you zoom in there, you can kind of see where the pipelines were sitting. That's the path we flew. Every photo is geo-referenced, the 360 and the still photos. And before we go out, we put together a lot of shape files and stuff, so we can actually just paint the lines, and that's that green line underneath that you see is the actual PLA from the client. Like an example of what kind of coverage we can gather data in a hurry is, I think Troy flew, 6,000 miles of pipe in 15 days. And we document, everything's, we have a tech with us when we fly, and we document everything. So when we get back, everything is tagged, and we can still go through the footage. We encourage our clients to go through the footage themselves, and or we have John Bradley on staff. It's just showing some of the imagery and the flight. You can do a lot of things with it. If it's dark or the day's dark, you can tweak the colors and make things. That water there's probably about 8 feet deep there, and you can bring it in. Here's we don't really stick to one map system. Some of our clients that work with Altus, they're a great partner for us. They're pretty advanced on a lot of their apps and stuff you can get for the phones and iPads, and any company that does any surveying with them, they get free access to this map set. So they have a UWorks tab on the Altus site, and any of the clients that we work with, we can upload our 360-degree images or our stills with them, and so it makes a nice planning project tool for the. Here's an example of some of that. The same type thing. All the waypoints on the map there are 360-degree photos. They're all geo-referenced, so they basically can just get put out on the map exactly where we took them. And right now we're working with them there to put a clip of the ABI of the movie part of it there, and continue to do improvements on getting the data out to our clients. So that's kind of a shot of that. This unit right here is one of our latest units we've purchased. It's shooting the same imagery that we had, and we have a TopCon scanner with it. And this unit will survey grade, 1 to 3 centimeter accuracy if we put up our receiver at 40, 50 mile an hour. And so we can collect a lot of data in a hurry. And we've been having some fun with it lately.
Yeah, so how this one works is it takes the imagery. It also, underneath is the silver box, is a LiDAR scanner, and it spins around and it spits out the 1.3 million points a second. So when you go back and video it, you can actually use the imagery and measure points off your picture as well as the point cloud itself.
Here's a sample of what we're doing with it. We drove through all those little blue dots on the road are the 360-degree images, and the colored point cloud is in the background there. And we're just spinning it around here. Any point there we want to take the elevation or do a measurement or check anything. It's a pretty powerful tool. Just showing some examples of grabbing the power line or the heights on guide wires. This was a pipeline bore just south of Grand Prairie. So we can take the elevations and tag them, and we've been given some of these point clouds to Altus. We're not surveyors, so Altus or the McLean's or any of the survey companies, and letting them build a paper copy and submit. We've done a few plant sites, gravel pits, stuff like that. It's I think a typical plant site there. We did one for Devon. It was a 9 or 10 day survey to do a as-built on it, and I think we drove it in an hour, half hour. Gathered a lot of data with the imagery there. So
this just shows some examples now of how you can measure off the stuff that we went and scanned, whether it be inside the point cloud or the imagery itself.
Still in the point cloud here, and we're just measuring the distance from the entry of the bore there down to the creek crossing. So it's 158.37 meters, 27 meters. Not very quick at typing. And get on the imagery here. And there in the imagery you can still see the measurements and stuff, or you can pick a measurement, measure the power pole, tree heights. We were scanning some leases from the roadside, and we were shooting in about 110 meters just from the road. It'll shoot in, and you can pretty much count every tree in there, grab the heights. We did a diameter. We did a drive down Main Street and around our building in Grand Prairie there, and the thing shoots inside the windows, and it pretty much blueprints the building inside and out.
Very useful tool.
Some of the things there that we've been showing to the RCMP, this one's the first one in Canada, and our second one is going to be here probably in a couple of weeks. And that's the one that's going in that track unit, and we're working on, it'll be a year from when we can get it into our helicopter. So that's what we're up to. This is a gravel pit that we did south of Grand Prairie. There's a program that we're adding to this. Is a change detection program, and anything that has changed from year to year, it'll highlight it in red. Or so we're working on that. We haven't quite got that yet, but that'll work good for our gravel pits and landfills. So that's probably good enough for that. Go on to the next little clip. Okay, with capturing all these point clouds and then having our imagery from all of our other imagery, we have a problem of displaying this to our clients. So what we've done is we've hooked up with Orbit GIS. And they'll take our point clouds and all our imagery. We can dump it in. We can dump our shape files, all our anything that we need, and we pretty much build the client and asset management tool that they can log on and with access and look at all their point clouds and imagery. So right here is a location that we did a demo on south of Grand Prairie, and show you some of the measurements on this software.
So this Orbit software is really good for what we do. You can actually just take shape files, GPX files of clients, and just put them right in there, and you can build your asset management for the company with all of their information.
One of the things you cannot see is which direction you're looking. With that blue shadow on the top there, it always shows where we are, where we're looking, and so that if you're zoomed in or out.
So that's the point cloud embedded in the photography now itself. That you can see each little point has got its own XYZ value on the map, and that's how you can take your measurements inside the image we'll show here.
Doing some measurements on the road, the overall length. Doing, grabbing the grade height and the ephemerals, just grabbing all the drainages, and it's going to be a nice tool for farmland. Go in and do our pre-sites, pre-jobs, and when we come back, this lease, we actually built this lease in our office. We took the elevations, took it all back after we scanned it, and took it back and built it in our office, and then we took that data and put it in the equipment, the contractors we had out there on this one, had the GPS equipment on our machines, so we put a 1% grade from where the rig sat, and basically built that thing. We did 2 of them just like this, and it was a little test run there that we did last fall, and this was only taken a week ago, this little shot here, and the rig's drilling fine. There's no water puddles or nothing. It's pretty nice, worked out pretty well. Just checking our width of our LOC there, making sure that we were within our boundaries. So I think inspection-wise and stuff like this is our goal is to have an AVI clip like this with our measurements and one day and submit this into our government websites for our inspection and as-built type tool. That kind of shows that. And then this one here is pretty much the same.
Taking now the photography from the air, the 360 degree and the stills now, and putting it in the software is very user friendly. And this is a good client deliverable. So we were quite happy about that. Works really well. Basically what happens here is you can put all those waypoints from MapSource into this now. And all the same representations. You got your blue for crossings, water crossings, red triangles for hazards. Turn your layers off now. So if you just want to see the crossings and inspect those, you can just turn those on. If you want to see just the well sites. Now this is just turning on the aerial panoramas, basically, and now you have the imagery laid over top of everything on the map, and you can look at just by clicking and looking in that direction. You can now see that site.
And once we add the road, and once we drive those roads and those leases, we'll have the measurements off. We'll be able to pull our measurements off of those roads, and using the air imagery there too. It will all be hidden in the background there eventually. Another thing that we'll be doing with the buildings and plant sites is tagging the buildings. This asset, this Orbit GIS is pretty good at taking, taking the tag and uploading the PDFs and all the attachments that need to go in along with that site. This software also has capabilities of, when we upload it into this Orbit software, we can give the guys in the field the access on their iPhones or their iPads and stuff. So it's a complete.
Android is coming too.
Yeah, complete from the ground right to the high end to doing your measurements to the people going to the field to get the work done properly. And that's our background is in the field and getting jobs completed. And we have a lot of success in getting everybody to and from their jobs every day just by taking them out there, showing them before they leave the site or before they go out to the project. So that's our kind of our background. Yeah, so basically with all this, we take the FMA holders, we take everybody, and we upload everything so everybody sees the same vision, and then we go out and help proactively plan that. We found, from drilling and completions and facilities, and right to the production, there's usually not a lot of data that goes into the same. Each division kind of has its own silo, but by everybody looking at the same vision right from the get-go, it helps keep the projects on time, on budget, and gets everybody home safe every day. that's our one saying is, I guess when we did our helicopter training is, one of the instructors we had there, he always said, when we were going into the land and stuff, he'd always say, you want to be there before you get there and have a backup plan. So that's kind of one of the sayings that stuck with us, and that's what we like to do with the people involved in the projects, is make sure they see the same thing as we need to see to get the job done. So that's our presentation. You guys have any questions? Yeah. Cost-wise, we had an example of a town.
So, for an example, with the LiDAR unit itself, a city was doing a 2-year project, surveyed the whole city for their asset management, everything. They put together a 2-year plan for $300,000. They had 2 trucks come and do it in 8 hours, and it was $7,500.
And they basically just take the data, they took that data and just gave it to them, and they put it in their own ArcGIS. The flying pipeline inspection stuff we do, we fly, very, very efficient, and we map everything out before we go, and we just paint the lines. And we've been finding our efficiencies are no more cost by the time we even take it and attach it to the map, the photos, because when we go to an area, we usually take our helicopters, our trucks, all of our fuel, and we just move in for an area. We don't take our LiDAR unit to a hotel and park in a parking lot and expect to have it the next day. So we just go there, collect it all, and go back home.
So, Don? What about building a mosaic from what you have? Is that something that kind of the capability that you have? If you fly a line, are you restricted to that line with your georeferencing, or are you able to fly like parallel lines and build a grid mosaic and see different directions on the same?
Yeah, for sure. Like I've done flight patterns where some guys want the whole area, so basically just fly a pattern back and forth, and they'll have it from every angle that they want to see it from.
So all the georeferencing ties in?
Yeah, everything come back and do all the processing in the office afterwards, and it just puts exactly where you took it and then the direction and everything. So. Yes. On the helicopter, you got your winds. Going in the rain before with the camera itself, not a big problem. Just the LiDAR unit itself, below 0, we haven't tested it yet. They told us it wasn't going to work, but they also said that about the camera. And
rain will not work in that.
Rain and snow, it won't work very well.
Picks up
the LiDAR itself.
Barry White. He's a PhD and adjunct professor from University of New Brunswick and the U of A. He works for Forest Management Branch in Edmonton, and he originally started in Alberta with as a research scientist with the Alberta Research Council. He obtained his PhD in silviculture at UBC, and his master's degree in forest management, forest soils, University of New Brunswick. And he has been leading the Alberta Wetlands Mapping Initiative. So I'd like to welcome Barry White.
Very glad I was expecting. So disappointed. Oh, we're going to hear some crooning. Let's get it on.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Thanks to the organizers for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. We just heard a really neat presentation on some of the uses of LiDAR, the business applications, and it's really, really neat presentation. This afternoon I want to talk about something that we've been working on since about 2004, and it's a large research initiative that was started by actually some companies back in Eastern Canada, and mainly J.D. Irving, and it was a project that was started probably around 2000 in the Maritimes. And I first saw it at a conference in 2004 and thought this was exactly the thing that we needed in Alberta. And we started a partnership at that time, and it's grown considerably. A lot of this work has been supported by the Alberta forest industry, and then more recently by several of the energy companies. And it's a product that we think is really neat, and it's one that's had a lot of deliverables, and some of you in the room have probably been using it for the last couple of years, and depending on the area and who you work with. So some of the challenges as an employee with sustainable resource development, we've got 4 principal challenges facing our department and the industry as a whole. One is enhancing the stewardship, ensuring the sustainability of our lands and water. The second big initiative within government right now is streamlining approvals, enhancing the efficiencies within the government of Alberta, not just our department, but others as well that are working on the landscape. And finally, enhancing industry competitiveness. Essentially what we want to be able to do, anybody working on the landscape, to do things faster and better and more cost effective. And that brings us to some of the challenges here. I show this slide now a lot of my presentations because forest management and land management in Alberta is much more complicated than probably any other jurisdiction in Canada. We have, of course, multiple players on the land base. Everybody is aware of that, and that brings a whole host of challenges. And you probably heard from, or hopefully heard from, Aniko this morning on some solutions. But we've got many players out there. We've got an ever-increasing recreational demand on the landscape. We've got a lot of sustainability challenges. And to make things even more complicated, over the last 5 or 6 years, we have mountain pine beetle coming into the province. So one of the points I want to make today is the forestry and land management relies on inexact knowledge often. Is an inexact science because we often have, I have to coach my words carefully, but not sometimes the data is, there's some noise in it that presents us challenges in the field. And one of the principal knowledge gaps that we're aware of, particularly if you're working in the boreal forest, is understanding where water is on the landscape and where it's not. And that brings us to our initiative. So we see this is an example of where somebody wasn't aware that there was poorly drained soils. In a cup block you have rutting. We have failure really to recognize how water is moving across the landscapes. This is up against the road near Whitecourt, so we have we've cut off the hydrological flow patterns across the landscape, and without a culvert, and you see this puddling on one side. Those are the types of features that we see quite commonly, and the principal reason for that is that because people simply didn't know that there was hydrological features in the landscape. This is an example of a small intermittent stream going through, and often if you don't have a GPS unit in the maps that we have, you walk right by a lot of these features. So that brings us to the subject of LiDAR. This is a technology that our department has really been pushing over the last 3 to 4 years, and we just saw a really neat presentation on the terrestrial aspects. What the province has been purchasing is aerial LiDAR, so it's a unit or a laser that sits in the belly of a plane. The plane's usually about 7,000 to 8,000 feet, and very simplistically, it's just a laser that's pointing down at the ground. Our vendors are usually about 60,000 to 70,000 pulses per second. And it's just a laser that one pulse is coming down to the earth. Part of that pulse is hitting off the top of the tree. Some of that energy goes down to the middle of the crown. Some gets intersected with the shrub layer, and part of that energy hits the bare earth. And then it's reflected back up to the camera system of the plane that can calculate an XY coordinate for everything. So in this particular, and it's georeferenced to the ground and to satellites, GPS. And the bottom image gives you what we call a full cloud here. You've got, in the bottom is just the bare earth. And you get all these returns from different parts of the tree structures or different buildings. And there's just an amazing array of things that you can do with it. This is just an example of a LiDAR data set. This is the point cloud for a stadium down in the United States. This isn't an image. This is recreated by billions of individual LiDAR hits. So every little tiny hit there has an X, Y, Z coordinate, and it's a three-dimensional. So every little feature of this is recreated, and then they just use the color imagery to bring it to life. Now, one of the reasons that we're really excited about LiDAR is because there's an awful lot that you can do with it. And it's really one of those technologies that's come along that many of us really believe is going to shape the practice of forestry and land management. I'll give you a couple of good examples. Forestry Division in SRD has been undoubtedly the main champion of LiDAR purchases by the Alberta government. And this figure on either side of me shows the extent of LiDAR coverage that the government of Alberta has purchased as of today. The dark green areas was what was purchased in previous years. The light green is what we just purchased this fiscal year and was delivered to SRD in the last couple of weeks. There are some areas in the white zone. Those are principally our areas that were purchased by Alberta Parks or Alberta Agriculture. To date, we have about 28 million hectares, and about 24 million of that is the green zone relevant to forestry. We have very restrictive site license restrictions in place. We don't own the data, we own a site license for the data. And the site license allows us to share it across the Alberta Public Service with our forest industries and with research organizations. Our data is considered to be medium quality, or a little bit slanted towards high quality. It's got a vertical accuracy of 30 centimeters, horizontal 30, vertical 45. In most cases, it's much, much better than that. This is an image that many of you have seen in the last couple of years. This is the bare earth DEM that was generated from LiDAR. This particular image is 1 meter resolution, and it is northwest of Peace River. And so there's all kinds of neat things that you can do with this type of data, but they're really neat to look at. Sometimes you can see old meteor hits. There's land scars, there's old landslides, etc. So there's a lot that you can derive from this type of information alone, but it's only the tip of the iceberg in terms of what we can actually do with LiDAR. It's the low-hanging fruit. One of the things that we've been active in over the last 5 years is really trying to bring this type of information to life. And I'll show you. This is wet areas mapping. So this is basically what we've done is we've recreated a new stream layer for this landscape, understanding how water is moving from every square meter to the next. So when we process this data, I'll back up a little bit, we use only the raw LiDAR, and the computer software that was developed in Eastern Canada is taking every square meter and it's figuring out the tilt and how that water is moving from one pixel to the next. It also knows how many pixels, how many square meters are flowing into it and across the landscape. And it's that 1 meter resolution that gives us the accuracy that we claim. It's about 80% plus or minus 5 meters for most of the attributes. The trade-off for that when we do vast landscapes is that it takes an enormous amount of computing power. So when we did the Hinton FMA, it's about 1 million hectares, that data crunched for 3 months on 48 computer processors. So it just chugged along from 1 square meter to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next. As we move into the boreal forest, there's also, the model's been greatly improved over the last year and a half. And we actually now start to use the full point cloud data as well. But what's viewed here is if you're close enough, you see a new stream layer. Where it starts at the tips is basically an ephemeral draw, and then eventually it moves into intermittence, etc. The darkest big areas are where we believe the water table is in the top 10 centimeters of the soil. So if you're walking on it, it would be a glaciolic soil, maybe an organic soil, it'd be like a sponge. It may have commercial forestry on it, may not. Likely it's just shrubs. And then as you move away from the stream channel, we predict where that water table is relative to the surface of the earth. So we color-coded in this particular image. The darkest blue is 0 to 10, the next 10 to 25, 25 to 50, 50 to a meter. Usually around 50 to 70 centimeters are where you see the really big pumpkins in terms of white spruce, because they've got the water table down about, well, we predict 70 centimeters. So they've got sort of the best of all worlds in growing medium. Again, this is just showing how we symbolize it, and users can vary that depending on what suits them. This is looking back at that same image as before, though. So we're just looking out of the plane. What's turned on here is the provincial hydrology layer. It's showing you you've got 5 streams in one lake. And anybody that's worked in the boreal forest knows there's a lot more water in the landscape. This is the results of wet areas mapping. So it's capturing, the other one captured what we believe is about 20% of the actual stream length, and many times, of course, that stream layer was in the wrong place. Sometimes we have no knowledge at all with respect to water. This is just zooming in that same area, and just ignore the green stuff on the bottom. But the hydrology layer here is turned on. There's no water features. If you look at some of the cut blocks, though, you'll see buffers within those cut blocks. So it meant here, this was probably Daishawa Marabini's areas, cut blocks. Somebody with the company had to go out and walk those areas to find out where there was a stream and where it's dry. And for each of those, SRD would send somebody out once in a while and look at those same areas. Alberta Environment might be on that landscape for something else. Oil and gas industry. The landscape's being walked repeatedly trying to find where these features are and are not. And this is the new data layer. So you'll see that most of the stream layer that was generated back east of the University of New Brunswick corresponds with buffers that were laid out maybe 10 years ago. This is another example. This is near Whitecourt. This is, again, just looking at some cut blocks. And you can see there's buffers there. This is the 1 meter resolution LiDAR. This is the stream layer that was generated down. This is the wet areas for it overlaid. So you can see that generally the cut blocks are aligned, and the buffers as well. I said before that we analyze all the data at 1 meter resolution, and what we've been providing to various users is that raw data in a raster format. So on the one hand, you've got, depending on the user in the area, huge data sets, huge functional data sets that might be 0.5 terabyte in size. But the really neat thing about this is that we can dumb it down, color code it, and put it on a user-friendly map. You can put this in the cab of the machine with minimal interest. And the thing that we like about this is on the far left is a piece of science that's cost millions of dollars. We've got 10 graduate students who are either working on it or have worked on it. But eventually the output is a color-coded map that we can give Boy Scouts and church groups. And for us in SRD, to be able to provide Albertans with that type of user-friendly product is huge. And the nice thing about this as well is you can change your color-coded maps depending on what your need is. This is the scope of the initiative as it is, well, actually as it was last week. What is shown here in green has been completed and has been released to throughout the government of Alberta and to the forest industry. So everybody listed here has been provided with this data right in the raw form. The areas in orange is the future scope of the project, and actually what was just delivered to us today is the area above Slave Lake all the way up towards Peace River, another 2.8 million hectares. What I didn't get a chance to change on this is we actually have increased the funding for this project, and the scope of it will increase up towards Manning. I think it's about an extra 800,000 hectares that we'll be mapping probably this fall in the Manning area, and approximately 2 million hectares further in the Alpaca FMA. A lot of this is getting the information at the right place at the right time. One of the things that we hear quite commonly from users from the landscape is that they've got a greater understanding of how water's moving across that landscape. So if you picture that you've gone to the field and you've got a 100-hectare clear-cut, or 100-hectare block, the challenge is to understand how water is moving across that landscape. Some people can do it really, really well. But there's a lot of, obviously, there's a lot of hidden water features on that landscape. But what this is useful for is before you even go to the cut block, maybe even years before you planned it out, you've got this type of knowledge up front. We believe that about 80% of the time it's accurate, and it allows you to plan around it and to anticipate what might be on that site before you get out there. And so this is our mobile office initiative, which many of you are aware of, but it's just an example of having our staff in the field being able to use something in an easy to understand format. We hear a lot about government efficiencies. This is another reason we really like this initiative. This is Carson Pegasus Park. This is a provincial park up north of Whitecourt. And about 3 years ago, Alberta Parks was interested in joining us on this initiative, because they really weren't sure it was going to work. So they came to us and said, "Not this little park, we're doing an EIA, and we'll use that as an example or to see whether we buy in or not." And so it's a very small park. It's only 1,200 hectares. We had the LiDAR data for it, processed it, put it into the processor, the EIA process. The neat thing about it, though, was number one, they love the data. Two, they're actually a bigger user of this data now than SRD is. They consider wet areas mapping now to be their number 2 most important GIS data set. But the really neat thing about it is that we mapped 1,200 hectares for $85.82. We can't send an employee from Edmonton to that park and back for that in gas mileage and per diem. And we were able to recreate an entirely new hydrology layer and how it's connected with the surrounding landscape that should, if any roads that are put in the future or have culverts, those features shouldn't change. Industry efficiencies. Again, a lot of this initiative is about getting people to do things faster and cheaper. One of the reasons it's cheaper is because we give the data out for free. It's a new government data layer. That helps a lot. But this is an example. This is a forestry company that's from northern Alberta, and this shows how they're using the wet areas. These are cut blocks that are laid out several years in advance, so they know where areas are wet, they know where they're dry, they know where the stream channels are, they know where they can put the roads, where they're going to need culverts, they know what part of the ground is firm that they can put heavy equipment. They know where there's risks on the landscape. Their patch retention, you probably can't see it from the back, but they've actually moved it onto areas that are susceptible to windthrow and very wet. They'd like to stay away from it. This is an example of a cut block that was put in probably 10 years ago, so prior to this information. But you can see they've left buffers around many of the wet areas. But there's also what this type of analysis has shown that there's a lot of, I don't want to say a lot of, but there's some timber out there on the landscape that's probably being orphaned because people didn't have an up-to-date stream layer. So there's stuff that was left that they think they might get as a second pass in the future. But now they may have to cross 2 or 3 stream channels to get to that small piece. It might be something that's wet and it's going to be a winter harvest, but the adjoining block is a summer harvest. So this type of information really helps with respect to the layout of blocks, but also the scheduling. This is an obvious winter block, so we've got different channels, but saturated soils. But one of our clients was telling us that they were able to determine their summer versus winter blocks in about 2.5 hours, where it would have taken them weeks before. So they can decide what is clearly winter blocks, clearly summer blocks, of all their blocks they were putting in, and they had a small stack of blocks that you would have to check that they had some uncertainty about. This is an example with respect to roads. And of course, roads have caused issues with respect to water movement across the landscape. And this was some of our early work down west of Calgary. And it's a main forestry trunk road that goes through. But on the image to the right, there's a little line that was coming down. It's got the blue circle around it. The neat thing was we were driving along that road and we saw that feature and we thought it was a mistake. And it was 4 years ago. And we wanted to know how accurate the model, what we needed to improve. So we went to that spot, and there was 8 of us on that trip. A bunch of us, several of them were professional engineers and a couple of hydrologists. And first we thought it was a mistake. And then finally somebody said, everybody shut up. And we listened, and we could hear, this was after about 2 weeks of heavy rain outside of Calgary. I think it was 2008. We could hear a trickle coming down the side of the hill. You could not see anything. You went over and you pulled back the grass, and sure enough, there was a tiny little channel that may have only flown every 5 years. Came down off that side. The catchment was about just over 4 hectares.